Christians believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross and then he was resurrected 3 days after his death. He later rose up to heaven and was seated at the right hand of God. On the other hand, the vast majority of Muslims have taken to the belief that Jesus Christ was not put at the cross at all. Another person who was a look-alike had been crucified by the Jews, while the real Jesus had been raised to heaven bodily by God the Almighty. Both of these beliefs are contradictory, not only to logic, but also to understanding, and indeed the laws of nature. They are also totally negated by historical evidence. Let's watch and examine what are the facts involved here. Even a superficial study of the various verses of the Gospels reveals that although Jesus Christ was indeed hung upon the cross, he did not die upon the cross and was still alive when he was taken off the cross. This is the established practice of God the Almighty, that he safeguards his beloved servants when they are faced with terrible dangers. And in this very world he takes them out of that predicament, especially Jesus Christ. He had been told by the God Almighty far in advance, much before the crucifixion, that like Jonah, he will also be on the verge of death and will be saved miraculously by the divine intervention. Hence, when the Jewish clergy demanded a sign, the response given by Jesus Christ was that no sign will be given except that of Jonah. Thus, Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 to 40 says,
Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to him, Teacher, we want to see a miraculous sign from you. He answered, A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth.
Whether Christian or Muslim, everyone knows that apparently when there was no hope of survival, Jonah remained alive in the belly of the fish, until the fish threw him up out of its belly near the coast while he was still alive. This prophecy of Jesus Christ indicated categorically that God the Almighty had informed him well in advance he would live in the belly of the earth in a near-death state, but like Jonah, he will surface alive. Indeed, the events that followed reflect an exact fulfillment of the prophecy. Upon consulting various verses contained in the Gospels, a crystal clear picture begins to emerge. A picture which shows that the divinely instigated circumstances were to become the basis of Christ's deliverance from the death upon the cross. The events reveal that when the pressure reached enormous proportions upon Pilate by the Jewish clergy, demanding that Jesus be crucified for a crime, desecrating the faith, and creating rifts among the Jews, then at such a crucial point, Pilate received a message from his wife that Jesus is righteous. Therefore, he must not get involved in pronouncing a death sentence upon him. She further indicated that she had seen a dream about Jesus Christ being righteous. Hence, it is said in Matthew chapter 27, verse 19.
While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message, Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him.
Not only this, but it is also a historical fact that Pilate had a very soft spot for Jesus, which is clearly borne by John chapter 19, verse 12, where it is stated that in spite of the knowledge that the Jews were not prepared to tolerate any lenience at all for Jesus, Pilate still desired to set him free, as is recorded in this verse, which reads,
From then on Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jews kept shouting, If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar.
Pontius Pilate was a governor of Caesar and was responsible for maintaining law and order. When he saw that he had become utterly helpless against the bloodthirsty element in the Jews, and that there was an imminent danger of riots, he made the public announcement of absolving himself from the crime of shedding the blood of Jesus, and openly gave expression of sympathy to Jesus. Thus, Matthew chapter 27, verse 24 says,
When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "Let his blood be on us and on our children."
For Pontius Pilate the governor to publicly refer to Jesus as righteous, then making a concerted effort to have the matter resolved without crucifixion, are massively important points which are not to be underestimated and should be noted in order to understand the future events as they took place. All the known versions of the Gospels are agreed that Jesus Christ was placed on the cross on Friday halfway through the afternoon and was taken down the same day before sunset. That is to say, that he stayed on the cross for 3 to 6 hours at most. This is because it was a practice amongst the Jews that in accordance with the Torah, they would take down anybody whom they had crucified before the sunset on Friday, because after that starts Saturday, which is the Sabbath day for them. And in accordance with the teachings of the Torah, they consider it essential to take the crucified people down from the cross. This is mentioned in John chapter 19, verse 31, which says,
Now it was the day of preparation, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath. Because the Jews did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down.
At this juncture, it seems pertinent to wonder and ask, what were the factors which became the cause of death at these crucifixions? And generally, how long did it take the death to result? Furthermore, why were the legs broken before the person was taken down from the cross? We can find the clarification of these questions at a reconstruction presented by the Christians at the Philippines at Easter every year. Every year at Easter, Christians in the Philippines reenact the crucifixion of Jesus as described in the Gospels. They actually volunteer to be crucified. They do it because they believe it will help them to purge their sins. For the onlookers, it is a bloody and brutal reminder of what happened to Jesus 2,000 years ago. Nails are hammered into the hands and feet. In the Philippines, they use real nails. They do experience the real pain that Jesus felt. In fact, a man nailed to the cross does not die from his wounds. He dies surprisingly from suffocation. Hanging just by arms from a cross, one's chest is compressed. It becomes hard to breathe without supporting the body weight on the legs. Over time, the strain on the legs and the pain make it impossible to breathe. In the Philippines, the volunteers are brought down from their crosses within an hour. Death from crucifixion takes much longer, often several days. The only way to hasten death on the cross was to break the legs, making it immediately impossible to support the body weight and therefore to breathe. But the Gospels are all agreed that Jesus died after only 3 to 6 hours, and that his legs were also not broken, while both the other men who were crucified with Jesus had their legs broken. This is recorded in John chapter 19, verses 32 to 33, which says,
The soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs.
The question then is it a sufficient evidence of death if a person is absolutely motionless? Is it quite possible that Jesus Christ had passed out due to the agonizing sufferings of the crucifixion, and the soldiers supposed him to be dead and did not, as a result, break his legs? Or the other possibility is that Pilate, as he believed Jesus to be righteous, might have secretly told the centurion not to do so. In any case, one point is certain, that a man cannot die in such a short time on a cross if his legs are not broken. Another incident, shortly before Jesus was taken down from the cross, provides further testimony which proves categorically that although he was motionless, he was indeed still alive and his heart was still beating. As it is said in John chapter 19, verse 34, that when a soldier pierced his side, blood and water gushed forth. For blood and water to gush forth is a clear indication of a beating heart, and indeed indicative of circulation. The New Testament speaks of it in a verse that says,
Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water.
Not only that, but when Joseph came to Pilate requesting the body to be handed over, Pilate expressed his surprise and asked how come he had died so quickly, as it is recorded by Mark chapter 15, verse 44, which says,
Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead.
This incredulous expression of Pilate also proves that the person who was on the cross for such a short span of time could not possibly have died without having his legs broken. Another pointer which proves that Jesus Christ was still alive is found in the report that the sepulchre where Jesus was taken was visited at night by Joseph and Nicodemus, who brought around 50 kilos of myrrh and aloes compounded together and applied it to his body. This is recorded by John chapter 19, verse 39, which says,
And there came also Nicodemus, which at the first came to Jesus by night, and brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 weight.
Myrrh is a very well-known medicinal herb used in ointments and poultices for dressing of wounds in Greek medicines. It has been used for centuries. In books of herbal medicine, some of which are renowned books of Greek medicine, there is a mention of an ointment labeled Marham Isa, in other words, ointment of Jesus, in which myrrh is the dominant ingredient. The books have recorded that this ointment was applied to the wounds of Jesus. In the time after the incident of crucifixion, a book was published in Roman language, which also contained a recipe for preparation of an ointment. And it is noted in there that this recipe was prepared for application to wounds of Jesus. To apply myrrh to the wounds of Jesus Christ to assist in healing proves that the disciples Joseph and Nicodemus knew that he was alive, but due to the dangers faced from the Jews, they kept it secret. And on Friday night, very quietly, they applied the ointment on his wounds and placed him in a cave-like sepulchre and placed a stone on its mouth. The sequence of events as recorded in the Gospels grant absolute proof to the belief that Jesus Christ was taken down alive from the cross and was still alive when he was placed in the sepulchre. Because in accordance to these records, not only did he later disappear from the sepulchre, but he also met some of his disciples. He shows them his wounds and asks them for food. He also disguises himself so that the Jews would not recognize him. Briefly, the events which took place were as follows. Early on Sunday morning, in other words, 2 nights and 1 day after the crucifixion, when Mary Magdalene goes to the sepulchre, she finds the stone removed from the mouth of the sepulchre, and Jesus not present inside, as is described in John chapter 20, verses 1 through 7, which says,